Hey, welcome everybody. Welcome to the show. Today is the Council of Future Conflict, episode 456. My name is Scott, the proprietor of the Future Conflict channel. Today, let me, Joe, I feel like I'm a broken record. We're talking about drones and Syria.
What a
It's almost
shock.
like, I mean, it's not to say there aren't other things going on. That's what the odds and ends are for. But with these two I'll be honest with you, it's not just Syria. We're kind of talking that region and a lot of the regional actors. But let's be honest. If I think Syria is one of those things that we're going to have to be dealing with in one form or another for the next 10 years. And so knowing what's going on now in this formative time, I think is going to be pretty important.
Well, yeah, and you know what? I had my entire theories, all of them had holes shot through them over the weekend. So when Stan asked me point blank on Sunday morning what I thought they were, I'm like, at this point, I really can't tell you. I have
You're talking about
no
the drones,
idea
right?
at this point. Yeah.
Yeah, well, we've actually got two pretty good leading kind of theories. One is the Nest drones that you were mentioning, which I thought was a pretty good one. And then
Yeah.
another is, well, not the Nest drones, because it wouldn't make sense for them to go do an incursion and shut down Right Pat if they're Nest drones. But then again, it wouldn't be the first time that parts of the government screwed up the operations of another part of the government. But
Well, it's going to get
it
spicy
makes
when
it
the
less
Air
likely.
Force decides to shoot some down, right? Because if
That's
you
right.
listen to that air traffic control chatter, it sounded like uh, security forces were considering doing just that. So
Well, one of the guys in this kind of media space that I really respect is Tyler Rogaway, who he runs the Warzone website, and he was basically like, most of these are just commercial aircraft. Some of them are actual real drones that people are flying around. Basically tamping down. Like, listen, it's not even that these things aren't there. They're just, people aren't, it's like a kind of a mass hysteria type thing. I'll be honest, when Wright Patterson gets shut down because of a multiple drone incursion, it tells me that there's actually something, there is a there, right? Something is there. Something is happening. I don't know what it is. I'm kind of at the same spot you are, Joe.
well, see, I was right
They
along
got
with
me.
Tyler Rogaway until Saturday rolled around and we got the story out of Wright Patterson, and then a few other things happened. And I was like, well, I don't know.
Well,
So
in so people pointing up at the sky and blurry pictures of flashing lights, that doesn't really convince me. But hearing all these stories from sworn officers, like
yeah,
actual police officers that are in position where they're not looking at it something through the trees, they're looking at, like, the report from the sworn officer who said, yeah, there were literally like 25 to 30 drones coming inland from the
from
ocean.
the sea. Yeah.
Yeah, you got to give that a little more credence than some, drunk, you know, Jersey
I mean,
Shore
here's the
guy.
deal. If that's true, right, and they're coming in from the sea in formation, you shoot them down. And when you actually listen to that whole thing, the right path thing, which we'll probably talk about later, they mentioned they were going to sanitize the airspace over Columbus. That means is you land all of the legitimate planes or get them out of the airspace, right? You
Yeah,
don't
yeah,
let
yeah.
anything else in. Therefore, anything in that airspace is an unauthorized aircraft. And that's the first step towards shooting things down. So I don't know. We will see what happens. A lot of interesting things. I know we're going to talk more about it. But I don't know if any of you saw it, but the Goodyear blimp got the win of the weekend. Did anybody see that?
Hmm, I
Go to
didn't see
my
it.
timeline and let me see if I can find it real quick. Somebody reported a drone sighting, and Goodyear blimp says you should probably know what the Goodyear blimp looks like before you start reporting drone sightings, because it's actually a photo of the Goodyear blimp. And this person was serious about it being. Here we go. Let me drop my tweet in the chat here.
Well, C Westby says, I think I need to build a laser rifle as long as it's a phase plasma rifle in the 40-watt
In
range.
the
I think
40
it's
watt
good.
range. Yeah, that's good. Click on Goodyear Blimps one in there though, because it's even better.
This one. Oh,
Guys reporting that as a weird shaped drone, and they're like, "Yeah, it's literally the Goodyear blimp."
pro tip: if you're gonna push you, maybe brush up on what the world's most famous blimp looks like first. The thing about that one is it's because it's taking a picture of it coming towards it's in a weird orientation, right?
Yeah.
It's like butt down, like it's like almost vertical, but in reality, it's just coming at them.
But Stan raised this interesting point with me, that this whole situation is the Chinese spy balloons all over again, right?
Yeah.
We're not doing anything about it, and these things are in our airspace. So
nice to have Stormy drop in. Thank you. Have a good day for yourself. I just want to say thank you to Grok for making this amazing Game of Drones throne image that we've got for today's thumbnail. Hat tip to Watcher. That was his idea.
Well, thank you.
Little AI
Watcher
manipulation.
has good ideas.
Well, not all of his ideas are great, but sometimes when they're really good, they just
you can't just give him anything, can you? You're like,
I'm giving him this one. I'm giving him this one.
I was just going to say, I'm not going to say they're all great, but this one was good.
I mean, my ideas are mostly shit, so join the crowd. All right.
Look, personally, I like CWSB's answer here. Like, why would we do anything about this? We shouldn't. Americans need something to complain about. It's part of our national heritage.
I like the stony, stoic, individual idea of America, not the whiny collectivist online, perpetually online narrative of what we really are as Americans.
Well, I learned something deeply true in the Marine Corps, which is it's not when they're complaining that you need to worry. Marines will find anything to complain about all the time. It's when they stop complaining that you really got to start worrying.
Yeah, that's like the old don't worry about if they're making fun of you, worry about it when they stop making fun of you. All right.
Speaking of Marines, I'm wearing a sweet H. Kaya memorial shirt. If you go to Mission Essential Gear, you can find this shirt on the back. It's got a pretty powerful image from the Hamid Karzai International Airport Abbey Gate incident. And the proceeds go to a Warrior Foundation that supports those families. So go to Mission Essential Gear and look for the H. Kaya Memorial shirt. Very cool.
That's cool. All right, guys, let's jump right into it. We got a lot to talk about today, so I want to make sure we don't dawdle. This first one, I think, is kind of, good money after bad kind of situation here. Russian forces destroy more U.S. Patriot launchers and advance closer to Pokrovsk. And, Joe, they're making some serious headway in the, Donbass. It's exactly like we predicted how they're trying to better their position prior to Trump taking over. So that when they signed on the dotted line, where the front line is located, they're doing everything they can to kind of locate the front line as close to the Dnieper River as possible, I think. And, I could understand the Ukrainians basically saying, no, we don't want to give up 1 inch or concede 1 inch of territory. But I don't know if the Ukrainians might not be better served, solidifying their border at the Dnieper River.
I think that's an entirely possible thing, and that's a point we've raised from the very beginning, right? That's probably the most likely strategic objective. When you get into negotiations for peace, generally some sort of solid geographic border or demarcation is a better way of doing it. Dnieper River makes sense.
Well, I mean, they would. I just get the feeling that once they get through this kind of line of fortress cities that they've got kind of along this area, it's going to be kind of open sailing for the Russians heading across the plain there. I mean, it's essentially like Kansas there, in that part of Ukraine. It's a flat, very, kind of farmland. So
Yeah, not much cover, not much of a solid territorial piece of key terrain, I guess we'll say, to defend from.
All right, let me jump right into this here. Russian forces may have destroyed 4 Patriot anti-aircraft missile launchers provided to Ukraine by Western nations, the Defense Ministry announced on Saturday. The statement said that Air Force jets, along with drones and artillery groups, destroyed a combat control vehicle, an MPQ-65 radar station. That's just the nomenclature for the U.S. radar. And 4 launchers of the Patriot anti-aircraft missile system made in the United States. Zelensky has pled with the U.S. and to hand Ukrainian at least 25 Patriot missile batteries. That's just not even realistic, Zelensky. We'd have to start repoing Patriot batteries from our allies in order to get that many of them for him. And some European countries have recently donated theirs to Ukrainian forces. This isn't the first time that Russia's taken out Patriots. Back in October, the Defense Ministry forces struck 2 Patriot launcher stations made in the U.S., along with the control station and radar set as part of the Patriot Defense Network. At the time, a Ukrainian member of parliament had revealed that at least 1 Patriot battery was damaged in October, but Kiev typically doesn't comment on the extent of the damage to Western supplied weapons. Yeah, I mean, they don't want to advertise when their, golden hammers get lost or destroyed. So, listen, nothing wrong with a Patriot. Patriot's a great anti-air for its segment. It's probably the best type of anti-air system in the world. The problem is they're so damn expensive. And Ukraine, outside of being able to, I have no doubt that the Ukrainians, when it comes to something like the Patriot, it's same with the MLRS. These are not rocket science, right? The people who are actually manning the launchers and all that kind of stuff, I'm sure those are all Ukrainians. The kind of higher level math on this is the emplacement, like where, like how to, the targeting piece for MLR, long range MLS fires, how are they seeing that deep into Russia? What aid is NATO giving them in the targeting process? Some of the training and some of the maintenance piece for the Patriots. I wouldn't be surprised if there aren't probably Eastern European or other type of European contractors that are providing that contract support to make sure those things stay up, because they're finicky, right? If this isn't an AK. You could just get to any peasant. This is a complex piece of machinery.
Well, yeah, you just tell them, though, push big red button, and they get that. Right?
Yeah. And I hate to say it, almost every complex weapon system kind of comes down to it, but there are a lot of steps prior to that. And it's not that the Ukrainians can't do that, but they need training, right? You have to be trained in order to do that. They made the example with the F-16. They said, could a Ukrainian pilot successfully fly an F-16 from point A to point B after 2 weeks of training? Sure. But in order to, fully apply the capabilities of an F-16, it's probably a 6-month course of training. And that's what we normally do for pilots who move from lower end fighters into the F-16 or something like that. So training is a lot. Training costs a lot, and it takes time. Let's see. So early last summer, Biden administration took steps to dramatically increase took the drastic step of pausing all Patriot deliveries to allies, instead announcing that they would be redirected to Ukraine. We're going to reprioritize the deliveries of these exports so that the missiles rolling off the production line will now be provided to Ukraine. Okay.
Biden said that. those other nations have paid for those missiles,
That's right. That's right.
and they're not going to get them. Crazy.
Patriot missile batteries have also been sent to Ukraine from U.S. bases of operation in neighboring Poland. All of this has been controversial as it impacts Europe's home defense. Yeah, that's interesting. I had that's one area that I haven't heard a lot. Is any of the European countries that are complaining about the lack of capabilities
Well, the
that the U.S. can provide?
Lithuanian former defense minister is now the EU head of defense, and he pointed this out very plainly that they need a EU-wide military alliance because of this very reason. The U.S. is not supplying them with what they need, and they're not enough of a guarantor of security for Europe. It's always the Baltic dwarves who are rattling the sabers, but they are raising that good point of, hey, the U.S. has stopped sending us what we need. We need to look to ourselves to resupply ourselves. He's not wrong.
Yeah. All right. Let me. So real quick, meanwhile, there are more indications that Ukraine's front lines are crumbling. This kind of goes back to what we were talking about earlier. Ukraine's military leadership has replaced the commander overseeing the defenses of eastern Donetsk region, where Russian forces are making swift advances. A military official said on Saturday. General Tarnavsky, 54, was appointed to head of the operational and tactical group Donetsk, replacing General Lutsenko, the official of the general staff, told. I mean, that's never a good thing. I can't imagine that he's getting replaced because he's getting promoted to a higher grade. I can't. This is essentially replacing somebody during a time of failure. Lutsenko was criticized by Ukrainian military bloggers and some lawmakers for failing to stop the Russian troops' relentless push towards the strategic city of Pokrovsk. You know, the problem there, Joe, is that when you run out of men, it's hard to continue to fight.
Yes. We're going to fight them to the last Ukrainian.
Yeah, and that's a sacrifice we are willing to make.
Yeah, 100%.
All right. Let's move on to the next one, shall we? So this is one that Watcher brought to our attention. This absolutely, Watcher, you want to take a lead on this one?
Sure. So for those of you who are too young to remember, when we first invaded Iraq and Afghanistan, soldiers were handed out decks of cards that had the names of high valued individuals for either the Iraqi army or the Taliban or multiple other organizations, so that your average soldier on the street would always know what the high value targets were, what their names were, what they looked like, and where they could be found. And turns out that a socialist clothing company founder has decided to make one for U.S. CEOs.
You know, you were talking about the beginning of the Iraq War for this. You know, what's interesting is that I remember a similar deck of cards for the first Iraq War. You know, the Gulf, Desert Storm. I remember, and I had one of those because you could actually buy those at the time. That's where you had Chemical Ali. Remember him? You know, Joe.
Yeah. Well, and you know what? Those are generally produced by counterintelligence people. They're blacklists, right? Yeah. Yeah, this is a scary escalation. Kind of knew this was coming. I posted somewhere a sign that was that appeared throughout New York City over the weekend by leftist groups that said that one man with a pistol achieved more than decades of progressive protesting. That should scare you, right? They're saying now that armed struggle is the way.
Well, and you know, Joe, the problem is that it's not that there aren't people willing to do violence in these Antifa organizations and other kind of, anarcho-commie kind of groups. They just they want somebody to kind of break the dam,
Yeah.
just to, so I don't want, I'll do it, but I don't want to be the first one to do it. That's what they're saying a lot of times. And so seeing him do that, I think will embolden them to take.
By the way, for everyone saying that Mangione did this because of his denied claims, the FBI has revealed that he didn't have United Healthcare. So that whole theory just went out the window. So.
Let me read a little bit about this here. The founder of Socialist Apparel brand, who was called online for death of corporate executives, is planning to sell a deck of cards for the most wanted CEOs, complete with names, faces, and decorated with illustrations of gun range targets. Comrade
that
workwear.
Right there could seriously be, if somebody gets shot, it can be construed as conspiracy
or inciting it.
Yeah.
This is the kind of this is a perfect example. This is the perfect kind of speech that is illegal, right? If
well, I mean,
there are types of speeches that are regulated, but for the most part, it's because of the actions that derive from that speech versus the speech itself.
Yeah.
All I'm saying is, the counter to bad speech is good speech, and maybe it's time we come up with a list of Antifa cell leaders and their pictures and names and faces.
You think I don't already have one?
Well, Joe, in that case, then let's get to
deck building, baby.
Yeah, we'll do a Council on Future Conflict Antifa target deck.
Mm-hmm. Karen, you have to be very careful with what you're saying, guys. Really, we don't want to advocate violence against government employees and public service. We do not want to do that here, especially
even left. I mean, so one of the things that this kind of along these topics, one of the people we criticize a lot, Nancy Pelosi, broke her hip over the weekend, and one of the things that actually made me feel pretty good on X is I did not see a lot of conservatives crowing about, oh no, she broke a hip. Let's hopefully. Blah, blah, something bad about that. If that had been Dick Cheney back in the day, just imagine what the leftists love him now, but they used to hate him, any older person. Donald Trump, if Donald Trump broke a hip, a situation like this, they would literally be wishing him death from that. And that I was just happy to see that we didn't do that. And so we're not gonna Fed post like that. Come on, Karen, you're better. All right, here, let me finish this up and we'll move on to the next one. Comrade Workwear, that's what a communist name that is. Founder James Haar announced the disturbing project just days after the United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson was executed on the streets of Midtown Manhattan. He said it was inspired by the most wanted Iraq playing cards that famously distributed coalition forces during the 2003 invasion of Iraq to help identify key targets in Saddam Hussein's circle. The deck helped soldiers find and do what they needed to do to those depicted, Har said, whose social accounts are loaded with anti-capitalism posts. And I wonder how much profit he makes off of his overpriced clothing.
This is going to be the Joker in my deck. Just saying.
All right. Anything else, guys, on this? I think that's. Are we giving this dirtbag enough time? I think.
Yeah. My only thing before we move on is prepare for escalation, as we often say. We no matter what's happening, you go into a situation and you think you have a plan and what you're going to be able to do, but the enemy always has a boat.
That's true.
All right, Joe. I'll try to make this next one short and sweet. Right, in, out, nobody gets hurt. Because we're going to talk a little Trump may use Bitcoin as a U.S. reserve asset on day one. Now, this is very interesting, and it kind of follows in the heels of some other countries that have done this. Not a lot have done this, but it would make sense that if America's going to do it, they're going to do it bigly. Donald Trump will likely issue an executive order on his first day in office to designate Bitcoin as a U.S. reserve asset, according to Jack Mallers, CEO and founder of Strike. In a podcast interview with YouTuber Tim Pool, Mallers explained the president-elect could rely on provisions within a so-called Dollar Stabilization Act, which grants him considerable authority to protect the U.S. dollar. This is a quote. There's the video of it, but it's kind of a 10-minute video, so I don't know where the relevant piece is. He says there's a potential to use a day one executive order to purchase Bitcoin. It wouldn't be the size and scale of the 1 million coins, but it would be a significant position. The Bitcoin Act of 2024, introduced by pro-crypto Senator Cynthia Lumens in July. Excuse me. Excuse me. All right. Proposes that the Treasury and the Federal Reserve purchase 200,000 Bitcoin annually for 5 years, accumulating 1 million BTC. The reserve would be held for at least 20 years, thereby taking 5% of the Bitcoin total supply of 21 million tokens. Actually, about like 19.5 right now. Because the other ones will be generated later. These speculations have resulted in some lofty new Bitcoin prices for 2025 and beyond. By the way, just us talking about Bitcoin is not advice to go out and buy and invest in Bitcoin. Though, in full disclosure, I have Bitcoin, and I think it's very cool technology. It says here that the Bitcoin price may hit 800,000 by this. Now, take that with a big grain of salt. $1 million Bitcoin was always something that people talked about, but then again, nobody ever thought it'd get to 100,000. According to Perian Boring, the founder of the Digital Chamber, Bitcoin's cap supply could lead to significant price appreciation, especially if Trump successfully implements many of the proposed crypto policies. If Donald Trump is successful in putting forth a lot of proposals that he has proposed to the crypto community, the sky is the limit because Bitcoin has a fixed supply, she said. Just pointed to a stock flow model which forecasts Bitcoin's price to exceed 800,000 by the end of 2025. Such a surge would push Bitcoin's market capitalization around 15 trillion, up from its current valuation of 2 trillion. Plan B, the creator of a stock flow model, meanwhile predicts Bitcoin to average around 500,000 valuation across 2025. However, he believes the price may go as high as $1 million. So, yeah. So anyway, that's pie in the sky talk. I don't discount it. At the same time, I don't bank on it either. So, I will say that I bought a little bit of Bitcoin over the weekend. So, I think buying Bitcoin, having some small amount of it is probably a good idea, but it's up to you to do what you think is right there.
This is not financial advice.
Absolutely, 100%. And you should never invest money that you can't afford to use, no matter what the investment is. BlackRock.
Yeah, I was going to say we all want to take investment advice from BlackRock, don't we?
Yeah, BlackRock suggests. Well, I think this is what they want to buy Bitcoin, and so they have to then. It's one of those kind of things they can't buy it and tell you not to buy it. So BlackRock suggests 1 to 2% portfolio allocation to Bitcoin. Stock to flow model Bitcoin price predicts hinges on assumptions that demand for BTC will continue to grow. The U.S. Treasury therefore accumulated 200,000 BTC every year, reinforces the idea of stronger demand in the coming years, and then it'll likely force other countries to consider a strategic Bitcoin reserve of their own. BlackRock, which manages over 10 trillion in assets, is already recommending investors allocate 1 to 2% of their portfolio to Bitcoin. We see a case for investors with suitable governance and risk tolerance to include Bitcoin in a multi-asset portfolio. That's because Bitcoin has a lot of volatility. So, buyer beware. This is interesting. Guys, for me, like, I always thought that Bitcoin was a cool idea, but really I started to kind of, so I was already in Bitcoin back in like 2016. But just to see how both nation states and these large institutional investors have begun to kind of, let's just be honest, they're hoovering up all the Bitcoin for themselves. This is one of those kind of things where they want to kind of corner the market in this asset class. And so if you own some amount of Bitcoin, that then makes your Bitcoin go up. So that's what happens when there is a shortage of Bitcoin. Watcher, I know that you've been into kind of Bitcoin for a while. What's your kind of response to the idea of a Bitcoin reserve?
I am always conscious. I think it's a smart idea, obviously. I think the government's actually already acquired quite a lot of it, although most of that has come through illegal seizures and various different types of things. I think that it is inevitable that governments will attempt to glom onto some type of crypto, and there's been way too much negative response recently as to the CBDC idea, which would be fucking awful, like just one of the absolute worst things that could ever happen to humanity. And because of this, they are going to try and influence other networks via their bulk purchases. I do somewhat, like, I'm an American exceptionalist. I get it, but at the same time, it would be a tragic shame in some ways if the horrible, horrible decisions we've made monetarily for the last couple hundred years, we were bailed out of because we bought into Bitcoin and nobody else did. No, I mean it. Like, in some ways, we need to learn our goddamn lessons, and it would kind of suck if we got bailed out of learning this one.
Yeah. Well, the whole idea of an appreciating asset being, so I listened to about half of that Culture War episode. Tim Pool does this, kind of one episode per week called The Culture War. He does it on Friday. So I listened to that after hearing this clip that's further, at the top of this article. And the guys that he have on there are some interesting guys and make some very valid points. I mean, as bullish as I've been on Bitcoin, I am not like one of these all in on Bitcoin guys, right? I have a small percentage of my total money that I put in there. Like I said, it was money that I could lose, right? It's kind of like gambling. Don't go to gamble money you can't walk away from. It was the same idea when I bought Bitcoin for the first time. And it's just one of those kind of things. It's kind of grown into something much larger than I ever realized it would be. And if you're wondering, okay, well, that's a janky Zero Hedge article with a guy from Tim Pool's show being the source for this. This is Forbes, the digital asset section of Forbes. Trump confirms Bitcoin reserve plan, $15 trillion price boom predicted. So I just thought that this kind of, we're not going to go through this article separately, but I just wanted to kind of show that this is not just something they're talking about on Tim Pool. This is a quote from Donald Trump. He says, "We're going to do something great with crypto because we don't want China or anybody else. But others are embracing it, and we want to be ahead. We want to be ahead," Trump told CNBC. He said, "Yes, I think so," Trump said in response to a question about whether the U.S. will create a Bitcoin strategic reserve similar to its oil reserve. In July, the Republican candidate Donald Trump promised to create a significant national Bitcoin reserve and predicted Bitcoin could eclipse gold's $16 trillion market capitalization during the appearance at the Bitcoin 2024 conference. So, I mean, this is not just the idle speculations of some Bitcoin bros on a podcast. So take that what it's will. If they were to follow this plan to buy 200,000 Bitcoin per year, that would significantly impact the price of Bitcoin. Joe, what do you make of this? I know you're a little more skeptical of this than I am. What's your kind of take on this?
It's one more step down the road of removing cash from people's pockets and trying to get everybody onto something that can be tracked. Reminder: Bitcoin is private but not secure, right? It is not 100% untraceable by nature of how
it's anonymous but not private.
Correct.
It's anonymous but not private. Right?
Monero for the win.
And even if you think it's anonymous, understand that every time some hacker ends up demanding Bitcoin as payment, they get caught and the Bitcoin gets seized. So it's not as anonymous as you might think. So they still get there. But I don't know. I don't know that it's a great idea. This might indicate that some sort of central bank digital currency is on its way, right? I get it's a stable thing to put some money in, but is it really? Because it just had a $10,000 swing in the last few days. It dropped down to 92 and is now up to 102.
Yeah, it was up to 106 earlier today. So yeah, you're exactly. There's a lot of volatility in there, so it's kind of not for the weak and faint of heart, Well, I mean, the guy on Tim Pool's thing, he said, "Listen, he's like, what does a heartbeat monitor look like when you die? It's flat." So his idea is that volatility in the market shows life and vibrancy. So I thought that was interesting analog.
I think if I was trying to con people out of money, that's exactly what I would say.
Before we move on, there is one bit I just have to say. Eagle Ray 66 says, "No one's ever met Satoshi who really made it. The origin story doesn't pass the sniff test." Brother, look at every other alternative currency which has been created in America since that happened, and tell me what the U.S. government did to each and every one of those individuals, and then tell me why it doesn't make sense to try and remain anonymous.
I get it, Watcher, you're passionate, but before we autist out on this, remember earlier when Scott said we got a lot to get to.
Yep.
Let me say this, though. Everyone says that Bitcoin is the ultimate in privacy. That's incorrect. Cash is the ultimate in privacy. Completely untraceable.
Also, if you want to go privacy in the digital realm, Monero, which is,
Monero is what we recommend in the ground rod classes. So,
Well, the other thing too with an the problem is it won't ever be a very good use case for just buying things with Bitcoin until it stops going up so much. It's kind of like it needs to kind of flatten out over time before it makes a good kind of spending currency. So a lot of interesting stuff about this, and it's something I want to just kind of bring this audience up to.
But I'll tell you what does continue to go up, Scott.
What's
the
that?
number of ships surrounding Taiwan as part of a military exercise.
That was a really good segue.
I would appreciate you letting me make the segues, Watcher. That way I know it's coming. All right. But yes, you're right, Joe. That was an excellent segue. Let's see. We got here. Taiwan leaders shocked by sight of Chinese military drill. U.S. remain mute. Joe, remember we were talking about these Chinese military drills just last week, weren't we?
Yes, just the other day.
Sorry to interrupt you. I don't want to. If you're chatting, I don't want to get in the way of your chatting there.
No, I'm replying to somebody here.
We talked about this last week. I mean, and it was going to be a very large exercise, but it seems like it's become even bigger than what they initially expected.
Yeah, it's gotten quite big. It was in response to their president visiting Hawaii and a few other places. And it's just gradually been increasing and increasing. If you recall, we've said for the chat, if you recall, this is the way that we have said this would go, right? It would start out as an exercise and continue to grow until it was an effective blockade, and it will remain. If only there was a world event coming up that changes things for China and might accelerate their timeline, like an inauguration of a president. So who knows? Who knows?
Yeah. Let's see. So last week there was the story about the huge Chinese military drills. Now Taipei has promptly blasted it as unreasonable provocation. Chinese PLA military deployed warships and fighter jets to send yet another stern warning against the separatist acts of Taiwan independent forces. Joe, how can you separate from something of which?
Yeah, they're not the separatists. West Taiwan are the separatists.
CCP are the separates. Since the size of the new PLA drills have shocked Taiwan leaders, the PLA Eastern Theater Command deployed joint operations of the Army, Navy, Air Force, and Rocket Force. These assets have been largely concentrated in the Taiwan Strait, as well as surrounding Taiwan and the broader South China Sea. An astonishing number of Chinese vessels have been deployed at a scale that could block external forces. This is a Taiwanese general said a couple days ago. This Financial Times observed a fresh report that Taiwan's officials are struggling with how to respond to phases of exercises unprecedented in size. A week ago, Taiwan was bracing for a Chinese military exercise to punish its president's trip abroad, that included 2 short visits to the U.S. It would have been another show of force from Beijing in retaliation, but what happened next took Taipei by surprise. Its military and national security officials observed that they called the largest Chinese naval deployments in nearly 30 years. At the same time, Beijing announced partial restrictions on air traffic in 7 zones hugging its coastline from Shanghai to Hong Kong for 2 days. There was not a word from the PLA. In contrast, propaganda campaigns, which tend to accompany its drills targeting Taipei. That's interesting, Joe. We always kind of talk about the idea that a drill could turn out to be real. Oh yeah, they said it was going to be a drill, and then they just kind of kept going, right? When they don't engage their communication apparatus, that tends to kind of make people like us raise our eyebrows on this, because usually they want to, kind of crow about the successes of their exercises.
Yeah, they've made no public statements or anything like that, other than the air closures and sea closures. Pretty interesting. A study was recently done, or a war game was recently ran, I guess, that said in an actual protracted conflict where China tries to take Taiwan, it would take us a minimum of 40 days to push anything through to Taiwan. I think that's optimistic, in all honesty. I don't know that we actually can. It was just China doesn't have a deep water navy. They don't need one. All they need one is that can block us from entering the first island chain.
Now, let's be honest. If the best way for us to fight the China early war would be air versus sea, right? But there's, that gets really expensive. If you're using harpoon missiles to shoot up, maritime militia ships, you know what I mean? Those ships are like throwaway ships practically for China. And if all they do is exist to suck up another harpoon missile, that costs us. I mean, our missiles probably cost more than those damn maritime militia ships do. So it becomes that bullet sponge that you need in order to kind of preserve your force. Or anyway, it would be a tough fight. It's not that we couldn't do it; it just wouldn't be easy. Let's see. Taiwan's military. So this is let's play this video here, Watcher. This just kind of shows some of the Chinese vessels out there. Y- yeah. So these be them out at sea. There be commies.
There'd be commies in them seas.
That's right. All this does indeed appear as retaliation and pressure campaign by Beijing for Taiwan's president's alleged separatist activities. China has condemned Lai for unofficial visits to Hawaii and Guam. Can a guy just get some sun at the beach? I mean, come on, what's wrong with that? During the South Pacific tour, which went on the week prior to last, it was his first such trip to the United States since he entered office. I don't know if I would call Guam and Hawaii the United States. I mean, technically, I guess, but come on,
If it's
Hey,
not
I don't.
covered by NATO, it's not the United States.
Well, my question, Joe, is how many Buckies are there in Guam and Hawaii?
Zero.
I bet there aren't any Cracker Barrels there either.
You know what's funny is I was just planning my routes for the Scout and Recce course there and back, and I've decided to detour for two reasons. One, to go and see our friend Corey in Bowling Green.
Oh yeah,
and two, because there's a new Buc-ee's outside of Bowling Green.
Well, you need to tell Corey I said what's up and let him know I'll be in the Ville for Christmas.
Absolutely, I will.
I wonder, are there any Buc-ee's like in northern Kentucky?
Yeah, Scottville. I think not Scottville. There is one. Richland, I think it is. It's on 75.
I'll have to see if there's one along our route to North Carolina because we're driving down there after New Year's. So,
man, it's a shame you weren't just 1 month later. You would hit everybody down there.
I know. All right. Joe, you want to talk a little bit about tactical-wisdom.com?
Yeah, we had the Boy Scouts here at the camp this weekend. 10 boys, 4 adults. I had a really good time. We taught some fire starting classes for them. They did some service work around there. But I took the 10 Scout Essentials and pointed out that this is from the old Boy Scouts, by the way. But the 10 Scouting Essentials, and said it's a great way to start building your get-home bag with the 10 things that the Boy Scouts recommend that everyone has before going off into the wilderness. They're also really good just general preparedness advice. I mean, their motto is literally be prepared, right? So
Yeah, be prepared.
I wrote an article comparing their 10 Scout Essentials to my list of things you need in your get-home bag, and it was pretty similar. So pretty neat article there. What we're pushing right now is training. I've got book 6 pretty much done. We're going to get it out as soon as we can, but I want you to be thinking about what you can do to train. Reading things is not just enough. You need to actually get out, practice the skills, and move with a team. Getting out and learning how to do it with a whole group of people, and then train your own group the same way. So if you can check out the training page, you will see all the classes we have scheduled. I'm actually going out today and putting up flyers with all of them. Classes scheduled between here and North Carolina. Right now we have Ground Rod 2 coming up in a couple of weeks here, along with a 1-day stick and knife fighting class with me. And then the next class after that is down at NC Scouts, where I'm going to run a fieldcraft class. Then he's going to run Scout and Recce. And then we're going to follow that up with the Fighting Kalashnikov course. So getting out and playing around with your AK and learning how it works and how best to utilize it in combat. So we've got another big training year coming up. We're going to have another big training week in May out here in Montana. I'm not in North Carolina. I'm in Montana, where Matt's going to come out and do RTO, SIGINT, night vision and night fighting, and then I'm going to do community security all in 1 week. So a lot of stuff. And this meme has just been classic. It's pretty awesome. Can you blow that up a little bit?
Yeah, hold on.
Squishy Hunter did a great job with this meme. It's absolutely true. It came from Friday's episode. and it actually kind of grew some legs over the weekend and went everywhere. And a lot of former students were like, "Yes, this is accurate." Uh, Rush Beater and Dolio in the North Carolina woods at 2:30, and some dudes who literally paid for this. One of the best stories, Charlie Gibson, great guy from the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, spent the entire week at Scout and Recce absolutely terrified that I was going to bayonet him in the dark in the middle of the night. And I did my best to make that happen. So it's good times.
Hey, earlier you shared the some logo of the organization that used to be called the Boy Scouts of America. I just like to just do a little palate cleanser here. This is the logo that we all
That's
know
the
and
correct logo. That is
as the real Boy Scouts of America, a organization that was wonderful, but when it stopped being the Boy Scouts, it we all lost something. Mexican Ironman for $20 says, "Great news, guys! I'm in a peace negotiations with the alien drone queen over Jersey. My terms are to hand over Canada and California since they're already used to be occupied by illegal aliens and living under tyrannical rule." LOL. Yeah, brother. Get that. Negotiate with that queen. If I don't know what kind of a queen it is. Depending, you may have to use some unsavory tactics.
Speaking of Queens and coming into the Jersey and New York area, y'all can joke all you want about Georgia Maloney coming here because of Elon Musk, but I'll let y'all know who's picking her up at the airport. I mean, I'm just gonna throw it out there.
Did you see that she gave what's his name from the Melee from Argentina Italian citizenship?
His name is Pele, but yes.
Melee.
The president.
Brazilian.
Yeah.
That's
black. There's a lot of Italians in Argentina, which he is one. So.
Yeah, I think they said that his father came over in like the 1920s or something like that. So,
I just want to say before we move on, Linden lady, I thank you for your understanding, and I've been begging the ranch owner to let me murk these fucking birds since the day I arrived.
Yeah, I haven't seen what purpose they serve there on the property.
I'm not sure why you don't just ask forgiveness rather than permission.
Right.
There are a lot of them.
Hey, look, Crockpot Broccoli. Simping for Maloney is way better than simping for Tulsi. I'm just throwing that out there.
You got a point there.
And first responder / be prepared. You're right. We do talk about the stabby dentist, but you yourself have done a few sneaky things out there in the woods at night to poor students. So I remember you letting them think they won a battle one night, and then you opened up with a machine gun from underneath a tree. There might have been somebody else with you, but that did happen. So.
All right.
Jay Clark, that may be true, but you know what else eats ticks? Possums. And you know what possums don't do? Scream at me.
I mean, if you're sensitive, watcher, man,
Tell you what, Scott, there'll be a guinea fowl waiting in your yard when you get home.
No, there won't, because my dad will have shot it by the time I get there. All right, moving on. So let's talk about drones, guys. Drone incursions closed Wright-Patterson Air Base, Air Force Base's airspace Friday night. This was interesting. This kind of, I wasn't tracking this, Joe, until today, the daytime on Monday. And so this kind of raised my eyebrow a little bit. Now, first and foremost, many of you are saying, well, but Scott, Wright-Pat is in Ohio. Yes, it is. But the drone problem is not just a Jersey thing. Weirdos shooting up at the sky are living in jerseys. And yes, this is,
so
but this drone thing is
I illustrated why Jersey is where we're seeing them the most. If you look at the East Coast in that area, the New York City airspace is probably the most defended, followed by Washington, D.C.
Yeah.
And the pattern between those two is over New Jersey.
Yeah. All right. The sprawling Wright Pat Air Force Base in Ohio is one of the largest military installations to report mysterious drones flying over its airspace. I can confirm, this is a quote, I can confirm small aerial systems were spotted over Wright Pat between Friday night and Saturday morning. Base spokesman told the War Zone on Sunday in response to their questions about the sightings. Today, leaders have determined that they did not impact base facilities, residents, or assets. The Air Force is taking all appropriate measures to safeguard our installations and residents. The drones ranged in sizes and configuration. Our units are working with both local authorities to ensure the safety of base personnel, facilities, and assets. After the drones were seen over Wright Pat, a NOTAM was issued closing airspace between Friday night and Saturday morning. The airspace has since been reopened.
I want to know if there's any Chinese generals that happen to own property near Wright-Patterson, because we've seen a pattern of places where there are Chinese-owned property near military bases that suddenly the military bases now have drone flights over them, and nobody's talked about them for years, even though it's been happening for the last 3.5 years. But it's been happening. We're talking about it now because they gave us permission to, because of New Jersey bullshit.
Watcher, can you scroll down a little bit and play this the audio on the YouTube video?
Yes.
Patterson Tower, Med Flight 8, 1,900 feet, about 7 miles southwest of the field, like transition your Delta Northeast bound.
Med Flight 8 Patterson Tower, use extreme caution for heavy UAS movement on the base. Security forces is handling the situation. Suggest at or above 1,700 AGL.
That we will maintain 2,000 and on our transition for Med Flight 8.
And I gotta keep the lights down so that security forces can see.
Roger that, no problem.
Position approved, sir.
Approved, Med Flight 8.
Med Flight 8 Tower.
Ahead for Med Flight 8.
Hey, sir, you're still approved through our Class Delta. After you leave, Columbus is going to sterilize the Class Delta as of 0330 Zulu. Patterson Class Delta is closed after your transition.
I'm sorry about that. You got stepped on by other traffic. Can you say again?
Yes, sir. Your transition is still approved. However, Patterson Class Delta is sterilized as of 0330 Zulu for heavy unknown UAS activity. Security forces is handling it, and Columbus is going to sterilize the airspace after you leave the Delta.
Roger that, no problem. Thank you.
All aircraft use extreme caution. Patterson Class Delta is now closed for heavy UAS activity.
Class Delta, meaning, yeah.
Go ahead.
So
a little more
D-class
about this
airspace is what everybody can access, and so the fact that they're closing that down means that it's military flight only after that.
Delta is the overflight and the emergency landing rights. That was a med flight. A med flight needs to make sure that it can land anywhere that it needs to in the event of problems. And he was just saying that all of that is closed. So it's pretty interesting. What I found most interesting is that at one point in the conversation, he said that he had turned down the airfield lights to allow security forces to deal with the drones. That tells me security forces was trying to target the drones with something that the lights were interfering with.
Yeah,
I don't know. There was a lot going on here at the right pattern weekend.
Yeah. Laura Cox, a member for 13 months, says, Watcher said last week he thought this could be a way for the government to crack down on civilians owning drones. I think he's right.
Watcher, we may have seen some movement on that because 2 guys were just arrested for operating a drone that flew over Stewart Airport in New Jersey. And so that may be an opening move here. I'm going to try to claim that these 2 knuckleheads who flew a small drone over an airport they're going to try to pin it all on them, but they are doing some enforcement actions during this.
Yeah, multiple government agencies. Look, Kirby gave away the game when he said, "Oh, DHS, we'd love to be able to do something about this, but we need more laws passed and we need more funding." I'm sorry, that's what this entire fucking thing was about, in my opinion.
One of the things I think this does is that it kind of gives credence to the general drone problem writ large, right? Joe, one of the things that we were talking about prior to the beginning of the show was, if it's Jethro who's had 6 beers into the night, pointing his shaky phone up at the sky at some out of focus lights, saying that there's them drones, flying over our house and whatnot. But okay, yeah, maybe we don't necessarily give that a whole lot of credence. But when it's sworn officers, like what we've seen now in Jersey, these are trained observers with the security forces at Wright Pat. Same thing with was it Ramstein in Germany, where they had some activity, the Air Force bases in England. The Coast Guard vessel off the coast of New Jersey was talking about being followed by a pack of drones. So when you start getting this type of thing, these are people who know a little bit of what they speak, at least being able to accurately describe these types of aerial encounters that they're seeing. Speak a little bit to that about why those are kind of more consequential reports than, say, Jethro out back 7 beers into the night.
Well, I mean, professionals who do this for a living, fly for a living, or pay attention to things like this for a living, is a little bit different than people like the guy saying, "Hey, look at the blimp. There's a UFO up there," when it was really the blimp. There's a lot of folks that were untrained and just casual observers who reported what turned out to be aircraft as some of these drones. But when you have police officers or military officers saying, "Hey, I watched them and they were flying in formation and they came in from the sea," that is a lot more credible than Jim Bob pointing his phone up at the sky and turns out he was looking at the Orion constellation belt, right? I guess just having trained eyes, I find a little more credible.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think too that if anything, if you only have kind of anecdotal evidence from non-trained observers, well, I mean, you can discount that or not discount that almost at will. But when you have that against, in addition to these trained observers, then that gives automatically a little more credence to, the more casual observers, I mean, because then it becomes just a multiplication of things that people are already seeing.
Yeah, I mean, that's part of the problem is that you got a lot of untrained observers reporting things, and that ties down resources to go and check out that report and go and see what they're looking at, review the video and all that kind of stuff. But some of the more interesting things that came out over the weekend was like the guidance given to New Jersey firefighters, right? There was a whole intelligence bulletin put out by the New Jersey Fire Service that said, establish a 330-foot containment perimeter. That's 100 meters for those who didn't know. Around any crashed drone, you have to wear full protective gear, including oxygen masks. Don't approach it. And you have to call the FBI and a bomb squad. This was pretty interesting to me at first. It led me to believe that they'd gotten some very specific information about what might be on these drones. And the fact that you had to call the FBI rather than local law enforcement was interesting. That lends some credence to the theory that they're the NEST team drones, nuclear emergency search teams, because they use cesium on board their sensor platforms, whether they're on aircraft or whatever, to help detect radiation levels. So that would make sense. Cesium hitting the ground and breaking open is not a good thing. But But then some of the other things that have happened since then led me to believe it might not be Nest drones, and I'm thoroughly confused at this point.
Well, so that kind of takes us to our next story here. This is another Zero Hedge article. New theory: New Jersey drone sightings may be nuclear sniffers following elevated New York City radiation levels. This is from a founder of an aerospace company specializing in military-grade drones. Published a video on. This story it's kind of funny. They go out of their way to say publish a video on the Chinese social media platform TikTok. Rather than just saying on TikTok, sharing his thoughts on the mystery drone sightings in New Jersey. His expert opinion is alarming, leaving many wishing that Paul Krugman's theory about alien invasion was true instead. He said, I spoke with a gentleman a few months ago who was trying to raise the alarm at the highest levels of our government about this one in particular nuclear warhead that he had physically put his hands on that was left over from Ukraine. And he knew this thing was heading towards the United States. He continued, everyone knows the administration is pushing to get into war with Russia. Let's go back a few years. Remember when the drones were mysteriously flying across I-70 from Colorado to Nebraska to Kansas and then to Missouri? Well, it was believed that those drones were looking for radioactive material that came up missing in the U.S. Ferguson then explained various payload drones can support, such as laser sensors and optics. He added, drones have no reason to fly at night because they don't see anything unless they have thermal optics. Drones really don't see stuff at night. Mapping must be done during the day. Ferguson also segued into the
hold on, wait.
So that just disqualifies this guy absolutely.
Yeah, flat out disqualification. Drones absolutely.
Okay, outside of thermal, what do they use to see at night?
Over 20 different sensor packages can see stuff at night, from ISR to LiDAR to all kinds of stuff.
What does ISR stand for?
Hold on. It's essentially you're using radio waves as a radar source, and you have multiple different drones that receive them. It builds an incredibly clear picture of stuff, and it doesn't need light to do so.
Okay, so it's like basically using radar, right? That's a pretty. I guess what he's going off of the drones that he's worked with personally, and the vast majority of drones don't have that.
I would say the vast majority of commercial drones that you buy for individuals looking to take photos, yes, they only have a physical, like a light camera. But any I can go buy a drone for under $4,000 that sees in 5 different spectrums. Aside from which, all you need to be able to see at night with a lot of this stuff is a camera with a removable IR filter.
So I guess my point is that most drones don't generally have those sensor packages on them.
Again,
most of them are visual,
cheap commercial ones that are made for people who are looking to take photos and videos. Yeah, sure, they don't put it on those. But
just let me give you an example. I'm not an expert in drones. You know this. I mean, you know a lot more about it than I do. But the U.S. Army drones, with the exception of some of the really kind of bleeding edge experimental ones, don't have any. They don't have LiDAR, and they don't generally have radar.
Almost all drones have LiDAR. Even my commercial drone has LiDAR. Just because it doesn't patch it into a vision thing doesn't mean it doesn't have LiDAR. That's what it uses to tell how far it is from the ground.
So I think then you get to exactly what he's saying. Is like they're not using it as an optical sensor.
But you can. The fact that they don't have it hooked up as an optical sensor doesn't mean it can't be.
And just like thermal, right? Thermal doesn't have to be an optical sensor. It's generally, though, that's the thing that is mostly. I guess my point is I'm not going to, if a guy works in the fucking drone industry, I'm not going to discount him because he says something that I would necessarily disagree with. So I'm not one of these people who's going to throw one guy's opinion out because he says something that I disagree with.
Well, I would throw it out because he says something that was untrue.
Yeah, it is flat out.
That's
an unequivocal statement that drones can't see at night. Utterly false.
Well, I guess let's.
The majority of drones now come with night vision capable cameras.
I guess listen to what he says here, right? Like drones don't have a
We
reason to
did.
fly
That's
at
what the
night,
problem
right?
is. That's where this whole thing came from. But anyway,
I know
carry on.
that's what I'm saying. Because anyway, I guess when if I worked in an industry for a long time and I made a statement and it just so happened to disagree with somebody who has a different opinion, that doesn't invalidate his experience. I guess is what I'm saying. It's just his experience doesn't coincide with your experience. That's that's all that means.
Well,
Because with the exception
no, I'm sorry.
of this,
This is very much like the Michael Tracy tank argument.
Hold on a second. Listen, I've read through this whole thing, right? With the exception of this, I kind of rolled my eyes at that because dealing with military drones, I know that's not necessarily true. But at the same time, everything else he says actually makes kind of sense, right?
Ironically, we've had two topics here where we knew that we're step out, and here we are.
Anyway, so let me continue reading this.
One
This
guy I
guy's
would not
opinion.
argue
It's
with on
one
this
guy's
would probably
opinion,
watch.
right? It's one guy's opinion. So just listen to it, and if you don't agree with it, you don't have to. I mean, this guy. If you can see the guy's picture right here, he clearly is not the mastermind behind this. Let's see. He says those drones are not nefarious in intent, but if they're drones, the only reason they would be flying low at night is because they're trying to smell something on the ground. My belief is that these drones are trying to smell something on the ground, if it's a gas leak or a radioactive material or whatever, which kind of goes to what you were saying, Joe, about the idea like these Nest drones that use other types of sensors to sniff out particles or maybe like gases in the air or something like that.
I want to raise a point here that I raised earlier today on Twitter. Just because we see them mostly at night doesn't mean they're only flying at night. They're just more detectable at night. These drones could very well be flying around all day, but drones are a lot harder to see in the daylight, especially if you put a light bulb on the front of them. So,
yet another statement here that
Phil,
the drones don't have any reason to fly at night. Bullshit. There are so many reasons to fly drones at night, particularly in a city where you have a ton of ambient light coming from the city. Most regular drones can see at night.
Every police department now has 3 or 4 drone operators working on every shift.
The problems I think with drones at night, especially Watcher, what's the regulation on like the collision lights on
none?
drones?
You put a collision light on. It's got to be visible from 3 nautical miles. That's it. And legitimately, you can buy one for like $5.
I guess my point there is that drones are harder for people to see at night because if they're not properly illuminated, they're just kind of like a hole in the night sky.
Well, and that's the other weird thing about this is then if these are all supposed to be covert and like nuclear sniffer,
most of them seem to have the lights, right?
They've all got the lights.
All right, Phil Collins, member for 27 months. 27 months is a long time. Thank you for your support. Airspace classes G up to 500, AGLD towered airports, C bigger airports, Love Field busy airports, B busy airports, LAX, JFK, etc. A and is 18 to 60K, MSL, E everywhere else. So these are those categories that you were talking about with the Delta or whatever.
Yeah. Somebody in chat pointed out another interesting thing that even I didn't think about, which, we could now, you have sensors that can detect Wi-Fi signals and can map based on how those Wi-Fi signals bounce around. And if you're in an urban environment where everywhere is blanketed in Wi-Fi, literally you could fly your drone without anything else besides a little Wi-Fi detectors.
Well, I know it was at one point we were talking about this on the show, how computer networks can see through the Wi-Fi signals that bounce around the room.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's pretty interesting.
Here's another one. They were flying drones at night during the riots, which is part of what substantiated Kyle Rittenhouse's case, is that we finally got drone footage of VHS.
So this is somebody else agreeing with this guy's theory is the Jersey Futures account, which is now deleted. A self-proclaimed RF engineer who speculated what you're seeing as American-made HPGE drone nuclear detector drones, which that kind of goes in line with what you were talking about, nest teams and whatnot, Joe.
He's
Yeah,
talking about a bunch of stuff that actually has not been confirmed. Like, he's one of my theories that we're going to be approaching here in a minute. It's in here, and he comments on it directly. It's like, and what he says is not true. The clustered flights. That's what no one has even suggested that there have been a bunch of clustered flights.
Yeah, you're talking about this image here. Says, I can't rule it out, but it was most distinct to me, the clustered and flight patterns of footage that I've seen that screams sensing, not logistics. I think what he's talking about are those groups that had been spotted. I think it was Joe. Was it early on in the whole Jersey drone thing that that they were seeing more of the groups?
No, they're still seeing them as groups.
Are they still seeing them?
When they had the alleged crash on Thursday night, apparently 10 drones responded to the crash and then dispersed.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know, man.
This is another one of those incidents where something happens and suddenly now everybody's an expert. Submarine warfare last week.
Hold on a second. Hold on a second. Speaking of experts, expert at being awesome is Hunch the Dirty Roofer, gifted 10 future conflict memberships. I hope you guys have your membership receive. Let's see, Kevin Dorr, Lance Corporal Veteran, Hangman, Nick Dev, Judge Maddie, Renee Miet, Casey, Improbi, Nightmare, Rambler. All you guys just got free membership for a month. So consider keeping that and carrying it on. Memberships, gifted memberships, and super chats are how we kind of pay the bills around here. So thank you for your most generous support, Hunch, and everybody else.
I want to point out in all of this that 2 of these drones have crashed, and there has been absolutely no follow-up stories on what was found on the crash scene.
Here's I guess if I am adamant about us kind of like keeping an open mind on this drone story is because I have seen people that I would normally put a lot of weight in disagreeing with other people that I would normally also give a lot of weight to, and they have very different opinions, and it's just one of those kind of things. And then some of those things go against, the eyewitness accounts from sworn officers and trained observers and things like this. So it's all very opaque, Joe. Yeah. And it's like those crash, those down drone sightings and never getting any. Another great example is the aircraft in New York City that took off that had sucked a drone into the engine, or sucked something into the engine that didn't look like a bird, and it would be very clear if it was a drone versus a bird on the ground, and nobody's been able to confirm that or not. So just some weird kind of
one more hole in that guy's story, and it's the story of the missing Ukrainian nuke. That's a complete fallacy. That there are no missing Ukrainian nukes. Between us and the Russians, we got them all, and even so, one of those nukes would be fairly ineffective by now. A more likely story on nukes is that it's a brand new Iranian or North Korean nuke that they're looking for.
Right.
Those are entirely possible.
That could have made its way into the country.
Container, just like to some of all fears. So,
and the scary thing about nukes is that the way they're generally designed is that they're placed inside a box that is made of lead or some other kind of highly dense thing. It makes it very hard to detect those in the first place. So
correct.
Going further down into the story, it says, meanwhile, these purported drone sightings are happening around congressional action on counter-drone authorities. And this kind of goes to what I think something you were mentioning earlier, Joe, the drone invasion just in time for Congress to reauthorize Orwellian law. And so this is that using the drone invasion to, reauthorize new FAA Reauthorization Act. Let's see. The mass hysteria surrounding the drone sighting appears to have been exaggerated by mainstream media, COVID-style propaganda. It's shocking about how the mainstream media gets involved, and all of a sudden there's mass hysteria and completely over-reporting of something like this. Perhaps as a cover for drones with nuclear sniffers seeking a potential threat, or this could be a deliberate attempt to scare the nation with a drone psyop in order to push through HR 8610, the Counter UAS Authority, Security, Safety, and Reauthorization Act of 2024, which is, I think, Watcher, you were telling us about that.
Yep.
There must be something going on that they can't tell us, said let's see, New Jersey State Senator John Bramnick. He said there must be something going on they can't tell us about because they're so fearful of what the public is going to do when they hear what the drones are doing. You want to play this this clip here? It's this is 6 minutes. Just play the first little bit.
As some questions, and now it's reached a point of almost insanity. You think about a United States senator who has to go out with the local police to look for drones. That's where a United States senator is getting information. We had a briefing from the state police, the colonel in the state police. He was frustrated. He had no idea where these drones are coming from. Not only did I call for a limited state of emergency and the FAA shutting down the airspace for drones, but also having the Department of Defense questions. If the Department of Defense doesn't know where the origins are for these so-called drones, then we're in trouble. We always thought that if there was something in the air the size of a car, that the Department of Defense would know where it came from, what its origin was, and what its purpose was. Now you have a United States senator going out with the local police, to look for fireworks at night? That is scary.
It's not scary. It's retarded.
Yeah. There's a big difference there.
Did you?
S2 Underground raises a good point. Because he and I both have been talking about this all weekend, is that when we point out that it's not aliens, everyone gets really, really mad. They want it to be aliens. But like S2 Underground said, he goes, more of you are concerned about it not being aliens than you are about it being a potential terrorist attack, which is far more highly likely. It's just odd the way people think. Everyone wants it to be aliens so bad that they're overlooking the fact that this could quite possibly be an existential threat. If somebody was just probing our airspace and thinking about taking down the electric grid, we're doing nothing about it. If they are looking for a missing nuke, they haven't told you about it, and they probably should. Or it could be someone probing for any other kind of attack that could cause a very, very large amount of damage. It is the spy balloon drama all over again.
Yeah, let me give you guys a scenario. This is, definitely nothing we've ever done. It's not like during multiple times we've been at war, we sent out various different things like balloons and rockets with bits of copper, naked exposed copper wire trailing from them to cause shorting on electrical wires or anything. That's definitely not a hyper common strategy in the modern times or anything like that. Cheap, effective, non-detectable, weird.
Let's move on to the next one here. Speaking of weird, no, I'm sorry. Can you pick? Go back to the notes. You didn't pick up all the ones that I added there right before the show started. Congress to receive right here. This one. Yep. It says here, Congress to receive classified briefing on drones. Now ask yourself, why would Congress need a classified secret briefing on drones unless there's a major threat to the homeland, nukes, or aliens? Let's listen to this.
Do you have any information about these drones that are flying over the United States right now? Is this China surveillance?
I don't know. But what I do know is that I think that the administration needs to be more forthcoming with information that they have. If they believe that some of these lights in the sky are civilian aircraft, then show us. Secondly, I'm getting a classified briefing along with my fellow Republicans and Democrats as to the nature of these drones. And so we need as much information as possible.
Do you have any information about?
Yeah.
Maria
So, I mean,
Bartiromo's voice is one of the most annoying sounds on the face of the planet. I would take a guinea fowl producing the news over her.
I'll go. This may put me in bad odor with my the three women I live with in my household, but I would say that 1/3 of all females' voices are in that same category. But that's just me. All right. Next, federal officials will deploy. Federal officials will deploy high-tech system to New York after drone shut down airport. So this is interesting. I think, Joe, basically, when you have an Air Force base shut down, and then this is gonna talk about a smaller airport that's being shut down. It starts to kind of rise to the level of, well, maybe it's maybe when we said at the Pentagon briefing that there's no threat, that we were, lying. So maybe we gotta do something about it, even if it's just hey, we're gonna do this a little bit just so people shut up and leave us alone. So I found this interesting. This is New York Governor Kathy Hochul announced on that the federal government will send a state-of-the-art drone detection system to her state after a number of drone sites across New York and New Jersey in recent days. While she did not elaborate on the system that will be deployed, it will support state and federal law enforcement in their investigation, she said. I'm grateful for the support, but we need more. Congress must pass a law that will give us the power to deal locally with drones. This part was interesting. Do you think that states, guys, should be able to deal with drones, like shoot them down or capture them in some manner?
Yes, because they already can. Literally. Literally. DJI, the company who makes 90% of the drones flown in America, makes a box that is sold to security professionals or law enforcement that connects to, takes remote control of any drone in their airspace. It's not a question of should they be able to. They already can. No, it's all DJI ones because they have a backdoor to all the DJI software. But the deal is the number of homemade drones currently being flown around can be, basically added up on one hand.
Now, I have a question, and I haven't gotten an answer to it from anybody, but has anyone been in the area of these drones and opened up the Drone Spy app on their phone?
You mean in New Jersey?
Yeah, because that would seem to be a pretty simple step that could be taken. I know the New Jersey State Police said that they're using a frequency that cannot be detected, which is, first of all, absolutely ludicrous on its face. Every frequency can be detected. You just might not have the right equipment.
Yeah.
Physics is physics. But Drone Spy scans all known drone frequencies and will tell you where the controller is and what type of drone it is and exact height and position. So that's assuming they're using some sort of conventional software to run the drone.
Now, the normal person, Joe, would say, well, if Joe knows this, then clearly the cops know this. So clearly they're doing it, right?
Yeah, clearly they may not.
Don't just remember, just because this is like trusting a newspaper that will lie about one story and then assuming it's telling the truth on all the other stories. No, if it's lying on one story, it's probably lying on a lot of other stories too. You may not know where they're lying, but you just can't trust them. I hate to say
earlier that when the New Jersey State Police put that out, they were probably using their top of the line 1996 Uniden Bearcat scanner that doesn't pick up a lot of stuff, right? So
Yeah,
they need a spectrum analyzer, tiny SA spectrum analyzer. It's working in Ukraine. So
guys, I hadn't heard about this, so this was something I took away from this story that was new info. Hochul said that a drone sighting shut down Stewart International Airport, a small airport located in Orange County within the Hudson Valley. Last night, the roadways of Stewart were shut down for approximately 1 hour due to drone activity in the airspace.
Well, okay, well, hold
This
on.
is going too far.
I mentioned that a
Stop.
little bit earlier.
This happens in almost every airport in America on a weekly basis and has for over a decade. Why are we suddenly acting like this is a new thing?
So this is a problem. So your
deal.
Watcher breaks news here. This has been a problem for 10 years.
Congress literally forced DJI to change the way their software routes around airports because this was such a problem that people were just flying their little drones out, having a good time, got too close to airport space. Because remember, you don't have to be anywhere near an airport to be within the airport's controlled airspace where they will shut down air traffic if they don't see what's in the airspace and don't have clearance on it. Look, I when I'm doing commercial jobs miles away from the airport, have to call in and issue a request to be able to fly in that airspace. Like there are whole cities where you cannot, like large cities where you cannot fly a drone without special permission to take off because of the airport.
Now, Joe, it sounds to me like Watcher is advocating for the tight regulation of flying drones within.
No, I'm just saying, why are we all suddenly pretending like this is a brand new threat and it's now gone too far and blah, blah, blah.
Because not everyone is autistic about it like you, and not everyone knows, Watcher.
Yeah, Watcher.
Just because you know it doesn't mean that John Q. Public or Joe Sixpack know this.
And this is the whole point of the show.
Governor should probably do at least a 5-minute Google search before she opens her dumb mouth.
Dude, it's Kathy Hochul. What did you expect?
I know, right?
Okay, well, facts.
I mean,
it's like Gretchen Whitmer, right? I mean, come on.
Yeah, you could say that literally about anything that she says. So
But here's why it's so cool for them to say it now, Watcher. They see the opportunity to control more of your life.
Right.
Aha. Now it's cool.
Yeah.
Well, see, this is where, I mean, Watcher, even somebody like you who's pretty libertarian, could articulate a clear threat that unauthorized drone usage that could pose against legitimate commerce and activity.
I could say the same thing about unauthorized car usage or unauthorized regular aircraft usage. I actually don't. I think that this is being blown out of proportion on purpose.
Keep in mind too, this comes at a time when they want to limit your personal travel, right? They don't necessarily like air travel anymore, right? So,
the one thing I think that we can kind of at least kind of cross our fingers on is every day closer to Inauguration Day is a day closer to this hopefully not being a problem. It doesn't mean something can't happen between now and then. Hell, these drones may be part of.
I don't know why everyone seems to believe that the inauguration of Donald Trump is some sort of a magical talisman that's going to change the minds of all of these people. I'm sorry, but that's just not going to happen.
Well, it may change the regulation that pops up. Patrick Steven, member for 15 months, says, I had a special visit from the state police years ago because I was flying a big kite to the Howell Airport in Michigan. Oh, next to the Howell Airport in Michigan. That'll do it. Philip Coggins, Class D is normally 5 nautical miles in radius. Class B is 30. Okay, so this is referring back to the air traffic control audio we heard.
Well, no, it's also referring to what we were talking about here, which is like there's normally Class D controlled airspace within 5 nautical miles of any airport. That includes small regional airports.
Yeah. I'm sorry, I'm reading some other stuff here. All right. Do we have some sort of, let's see.
Yeah, I've got one. Before we move on from the topic, which is honestly what I think, at least, look, I need to clarify. Do I think this is every flight? No, because I think most of what's being spotted are known commercial drones or known commercial flights or private flights that are being misidentified because everybody's gone into mass hysteria mode. Just a moment. All right. But here's honestly what I think is the most likely thing and why the government isn't talking about it. This is the Petrodyne XP4, which is being developed in partnership with the US Navy as a recon and logistics drone, which is capable of taking packages from the ship to the shore. Do you know which naval base it's currently being tested in, or what state that naval base resides in? New Jersey. It's a semi-secret program. It would explain literally all of the government's humming and hawing and the weasel words they're using every time one of them gets up to try and talk about, oh, we have no evidence at this time. And it also explains why, even though they're telling you they don't know what it is, they're saying, it's not a threat, because they know what it is.
At this point though, they would have to, because it's causing such a hysteria. They would have to come and say, hey, hold on. Listen, let's all take a step back here. There was some testing going on. They could even lie and say, we didn't know about it. We just found out about it. At this point, we've got fire departments and police departments expending millions of dollars a day. And I'm not exaggerating there, on responding to these. And somebody would have to say something about it.
Unless the hysteria was part of the point.
I don't think so. I just don't think so, especially for a military test. I mean, so here's the thing. The only
Air Force Base would have known about it before they landed on the Air Force Base.
Right. So the only thing that's secret about this is the fact that is probably the testing parameters for specific tests that they're doing. This clearly is in the open, right? We can see a picture of it. We know who makes it. We know what the designation is. About it. So this is probably something that's been around for a while. It's just the specific test, profile that they're doing now might be classified, which would make sense, right? Because, you give general ideas about capabilities out in the public, not specifics. But it also doesn't explain, like, for instance, right path, right? See, this is the problem. There's all these very, very kind of good explanations for part of the phenomenon that's going on, but nothing that, like, oh, well, this makes sense why it's going on, like, broad area. It doesn't explain, like, the Ramstein or the airports, the Air Force bases in England, right? There's something going on here. I have no fucking idea what it is. All right. So this is tangentially related because it's dealing with AI, which all the advanced drone programs have large sections of it dedicated to AI control and coordination for swarming drones and things like this. And so this is something our good friend of the channel, member emeritus, Stan shared on an earlier post this morning. And I thought this is maybe something that would be good for us to kind of close out this segment with. If you're ever thinking that the government is a benign kind of organization that has our best interests at heart, i.e. with the drones or anything else, listen to this.
We had meetings in DC in May where we talked to them about this, and the meetings were absolutely horrifying. And we came out basically deciding we had to endorse Trump.
What did you hear in those meetings?
AI is a technology basically that the government is going to completely control. This is not going to be a startup thing. They actually said flat out to us, don't do AI startups. Like don't fund AI startups. That's not something that we're going to allow to happen. They're not going to be allowed to exist. There's no point. They basically said AI is going to be a game of 2 or 3 big companies working closely with the government, and we're going to basically wrap them in a, I'm paraphrasing, but we're going to basically wrap them in a government cocoon. We're going to protect them from competition. We're going to control them, and we're going to dictate what they do. And then I said, well, I don't understand how you're going to lock this down so much, because like the math for, AI is like out there and it's being taught everywhere. And, they literally said, well, during the Cold War, we classified entire areas of physics and took them out of the research community, and like entire branches of physics basically went dark and didn't proceed. And that if we decide we need to, we're going to do the same thing to the math underneath AI.
Wow.
And I said, I've just learned two very important things. Because I wasn't aware of the former, and I wasn't aware that you were, even conceiving of doing it to the latter.
I hate to lend credibility to someone that I hate, but Weinstein has been talking about that physics part of it for years.
So that's interesting that after I saw this video, I saw like a retweet by Weinstein where he talked about the physics thing, and that's absolutely something that he has done a lot of work with. And he's, just because I don't like him doesn't mean he's not wrong, or doesn't mean he's wrong. Just the idea that our government completely takes entire areas of research and classifies everything up to the gills on it, and basically shuts that these branches of science down is kind of shocking, right? I mean, it doesn't surprise me, but it's still, when I come back around and think of the idea, it's rather shocking.
Before we move on, I just have to say, stand by Forging Freedom TV. Someone on this show might have a solution for that problem in the very near future.
All right. Moving on to Syria and all things that I tell you, Syria is just one of those kind of things where it'll either kind of fade into our memory over time, or it'll be something that we are wishing that we had never heard of. It's like, be ruining the day I ever heard about this country.
I can really recap all of Syria's last developments since Friday real quickly by saying the media continues to whitewash Al Qaeda and continues to not report.
And so does the U.S. government.
Yes, and they're not covering the mass killings that are going on in Syria right now. Anyway, carry on.
All right. U.S. in direct contact with designated terror group HTS, Blinken admits. U.S. has made direct contact with the group HTS under Abu al-Jilani, which has now holds Damascus and most major Syrian cities in the wake of Assad's fall. We've been in contact with HTS and other parties. U.S. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken said following talks with Arab diplomats in Aqaba, Jordan.
Look, and in case anybody's unaware, HTS is a group that literally was one of the foremost ISIS leaders who said, you know what, I still agree with the caliphate and everything ISIS does. However, we're going to break off the whole global caliphate part of it. We just want our terror state to be local.
Which in turn is exactly what al-Baghdadi was. He was an Al Qaeda in Iraq official and started his own group, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. This is the first official acknowledgement that the Biden administration has interacted with HTS, which has long been an official U.S. designated terror organization, as it originated as Syrian Al Qaeda. Jilani also was once a personal envoy of ISIS leader Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi.
Anyone know where al-Jilani is from? Because it's not Syria.
What is it, Jordan?
He's a Saudi by birth.
It's a Saudi. Let's see. The U.S. designates HTS as a terrorist organization, making it legally impossible to work with the group, but contacts underscores ongoing efforts to change that designation as the U.S. and its allies look to support Syria's transition from Assad. Did we ever undesignate the Taliban as terrorists?
I don't think so. I think we were going to and then did not.
But we give them anywhere between $28 and $80 million every month.
Yes.
NBC has underscored the U.S. designated. Hold on a second. This statement from Blinken's meeting in Aqaba is signed by representatives of the U.S., EU, Turkey, and several Arab countries, calling for a more hopeful, secure, and peaceful future. The reemergence of all.
I get that in diplomacy, you sometimes have to negotiate with and deal with people you don't like and you wouldn't invite into your own home. But these are literally terrorists. We used to have a stand where we did not negotiate with terrorists.
Yeah. I mean, it's just, but you got to remember that was back when Americans were people of principle, Joe. Look who we have talking to him. It's Anthony Blinken.
And he says, what's the over-under on a Syria invasion in the next 6 to 10 years? Bro, it happened like 5 years ago, at least.
I say we're literally there right now.
We're literally occupying ground in Syria. So a long time ago. Remember Barack Obama?
Yeah.
It was longer than that because Barack Obama was the one who said, we don't have any troops in Syria until someone showed a convoy in Syria flying American flags. They was like, oh, well, yeah, those guys.
It depends on who you're talking about invading, right? I mean, Turkey's getting ready to continue their invasion of SDF territory right now.
Continue. They've already been there.
I know. Well, they stopped. They stopped at the Euphrates essentially, and I think they will continue that in the near future. I don't know if you saw though, Joe, that the U.S. went and occupied former Russian bases in some of the areas that they just recently skedaddled from.
It said we conducted joint patrols, but we know what that really means.
As we see Syria move in that direction and in a Syria-led and Syria-owned process take these steps, we in turn will look at various sanctions and other measures that we've taken and respond in kind, Blinken said. Blinken affirmed the U.S. position that Syria has been communicated to the new HTS leaders. Ironically, this comes after years of the U.S. refusing to engage diplomatic with Bashar al-Assad, who was a secular ruler. It's ironic, right, Joe? Like, we wouldn't talk to Bashar al-Assad, but we'll talk to these monsters.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'll be honest, don't get me wrong, because everyone misunderstands us when we do things like this. We understand nuance, right? And shades of gray. Bashar al-Assad was absolutely a horrible and evil man, but he was not as horrible and evil as this guy.
Well, hey, watcher, go down, bring up the picture in the next this X post right here. Tell me which one's the terrorist, Joe.
Well, I pointed out that these guys look like some suburban church's worship band up on stage on Sunday. This is an absolute whitewashing of these guys. This is not how they dress on a daily basis. This is trying to make them palatable to the Western society.
So it's like this guy right here, big smile, and then the guy on the end next to Jelani, he looks uncomfortable because he's not near, like the other smiling guys.
He's like, I'm standing way too close to Jelani, and the last guy who touched his back like that guy got killed.
I'll tell you
Jelani looks like he looks like a corpse.
Well, I'll tell you what looks uncomfortable. This dude's button, which is absolutely screaming and about to go off at a ballistic angle.
Well, in his defense, that's not his jacket. He just took it off of a guy he hung like 3 hours ago. This is right here. Jelani looks so angry in this photo because he was forced to wear Western clothes. He doesn't want to do that, but he has to in order to get the cash flowing into his country, his new country.
If I remember correctly, these guys who are in the picture with him are not like, they're like visitors that are meeting him from somewhere else.
I don't know.
So like Jelani's the bad guy, and then these guys are just coming in to kind of kiss up to him, and establish, a relationship. You don't establish a relationship with a guy like this. He's a freaking psychopath.
Well, something to remember as well as we're going to continue having these conversations, and I'm sure we'll be talking about this individual in future, is that Golani is actually not his name. That's a nom de guerre, which means from Golan, meaning the Golan Heights. Can't remember what his actual name is, but he recently was like, I am Golani no more, and then started talking about whatever his actual name is.
All right.
I'll point out, for no particular reason, as the world continues to heat up, that the events in Mongol Moon happen at 6 p.m. on Christmas Eve.
Speaking of the Golan Heights, moving on to our next story, is Israel trying to entrench its occupation of the Golan Heights? The answer is yes. They are absolutely, because they just increased the settler number by 100%, I think. And they've got their buffer zone that they are. Hey, Joe, I don't know if you saw this, but even more Druze communities are asking for Israeli protection and annexation. There's a Druze area bordering against Jordan that's not up against the Israeli-controlled buffer zone that is now asking for the Israelis to continue to conquer over to where they live so they can be.
No, I get it, but Israel is making a stupid move here and falling right into a trap that's being set by the international community, right? They're doing what they think is right for Israel. They're doing what they think is right for these marginalized Druze communities who are now afraid of the radical Islamists that run their country now. But it feeds right into the international narrative that Israel wants to create the Greater Israel Project and take over all this. They should just not do it. They should let the UN or somebody expand a force in the buffer zone and move back.
I completely agree with what you're saying. I think the Israelis are probably a little suspect to the UN, given that more than like 3/4 of the UN employees that they found inside the Gaza area, which is where the UN had its national.
I absolutely get it, but this just feeds the narrative.
Yeah.
Jews narrative. So
I am of the opinion that let me just read this a little bit more, and I'll kind of go into it because I don't want to kind of double tap stuff from the story if it's in here. Let's see.
Monday, it is Monday, so we have to. I'm sorry, I take all my comments back. I forgot it was Mossad Monday.
Mossad Monday.
I was just gonna say we need that paycheck. Come on.
Hey, dude, I'm trying to get paid here, Joe. Come on, man. All right. Since
let me put the right spin on it. Yeah, I mean, like, why would a nation want to protect the only high ground which was previously used to set up artillery rounds and launch them onto Israeli territory?
Wait a second, Joe. Let me try this out on for size to see how it works. Dim Druze. Yeah.
That's good. That's good.
All right. Since the fall of the Assad regime, Israel has attacked Syria to deepen the occupation of the Golan Heights. Among Israel's recent violations of Syrian sovereignty, ironically enough, this is an Al Jazeera article, so yes, it's going to be relatively negative. So just bear.
Wait, they're not completely neutral.
That's right, exactly right. Amazing, especially when it's written by Al Jazeera staff, right? And not like somebody's byline. Amongst the recent violations of Syrian sovereignty, which include hundreds of air attacks, is a renewed encroachment into the Golan Heights with tanks and illegal settlements. The Golan Heights spread over 1,800 square kilometers and have been a flashpoint in the region for decades. So what are they? Why is Israel trying to do there? And here's what we know. What are the Golan Heights? Okay, so this is probably good because I'm sure there's people in the chat that don't know what the Golan Heights are. They are in the southwestern Syria. That's basically the portion of Syria that borders against Israel. They are bordering the Yarmouk River in the south and the Sea of Galilee. In the west, the Golan spreads over basalt rock with fertile land and vital water sources that feed the Jordan River and the Haspani River, which flows from Lebanon through the Golan. Who do the Golan Heights belong to? The Golan Heights are part of Syria, as recognized by the United Nations. By the way, when you hear the word illegal in here, that's illegal when it comes to the UN. Ultimately, nobody gives a shit what the UN says, and therefore, in matters between states, it's not illegal.
They were seized by Syria.
The Golan Heights belong to Israel now. I mean,
I get it, but originally it belonged to Lebanon, seized by Syria when Syria occupied Lebanon.
Almost immediately after Israel occupied that part of the Golan and started to build illegal settlements there, the UN Monitor Buffer Zone separates Israeli-occupied territory from the remaining part that is still under Syria's control. Aren't settlements illegal? No, they aren't illegal because there are no. Oh, wait a second. But this is the Al Jazeera. Yes, they are illegal. And yet Israel has built more than 30 settlements in the area where more than 25,000 Jewish Israelis live. By the way, they say Jewish Israelis because that's just the Jewish Israelis that live there. They don't talk about the Druze and other minority groups that live in that area too. All of which people who are native to that area are very happy about living under Israeli control. And it's one of the reasons why dim Druze want to get taken over by the Jews. I'm sorry. I won't do that anymore. The Druze are absolutely screaming for Israel to take over their lands. Late on Sunday, the cabinet approved of an $11 million plan to enhance services of existing illegal settlements and to fund a plan to bring more settlers there. This is not happening in isolation, as Israel is also attacking sites across Syria, claiming that it's doing so in self-defense. So that's what they're saying. And honestly, I think there is probably more to criticize in their continued attacks against Syria. I understand why Israel is doing it, but it's going a little far, I don't know. Maybe not. Who lived there before the settlers came to Golan? The Druze, who number around 20,000. The Druze are an ethno-religious community who live in Syria, Jordan, and Lebanon, tend to keep to themselves unless the local Muslims decide to try to genocide them.
Well, Druze militias are no joke, by the way.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's because they have to protect themselves against existential threats.
Correct.
Now, that was one of the reasons why they liked Assad because he actually agreed to look after them and protect them. Almost all of the minorities were pro-Assad because he protected their communities against radical Islam. When Israel invaded the Golan in 1967, it violently expelled most of the Druze who lived there. Druze missiles, yeah. I'm with you.
I don't know that that's actually factually accurate, but okay.
Has Syria ever tried to take back the Golan Heights? Yes, but without success. Yes, they failed miserably. During the 73 war, Syria tried to take back the Golan Heights, but couldn't. In 74, the UN got involved deploying peacekeeper forces there after Syria and Israel signed an armistice. Now, this armistice that Syria and Israel signed is the one they keep citing that it's illegal for Israel to continue to do what they did. Who did they sign that with? They signed it with Assad's father's regime. That Syria is no more. And thus, any kind of protestation that Israel is taking illegal action against signed treaties is null and void because those governments and the continuity of those governments are gone.
I don't know, Scott. That all sounds like a big Jewish conspiracy theory to me.
Well, it may be a Jewish one.
Jewish conspiracy theory. Yes. Excellent points to the Fed Postinator for the Spaceballs reference.
Yes. What's the world's position on the Golan Heights? No country other than Donald Trump's recognizes Israeli occupation of the Syrian Golan Heights. Well, the United States is really the only country in the world that matters, in my opinion. So, that's all that matters.
Here's what's funny is we're so anti-settlement in this area, but what do you call Los Angeles in its current state, or some of these apartment buildings in places like Aurora, Colorado, and Austin, Texas? taken over by Tren de Aragua. Are those not just settlements?
Oh, I'm glad you
Illegal.
clarified, because when you asked me what I call Los Angeles in its current state, I was going to say a cesspool.
No, but it is a settlement of illegal aliens. So it's funny how it's wrong in some areas, but it's okay in others and virtuous. What is St. Paul, Minnesota, but a Somali settlement?
Yep.
He's got a point.
All right. Enough of the Al Jazeera. Let's go to this. We got 2 more stories to go here. This one is Times of Israel, a little more probably balanced towards Israel commentary of what's going on. So we're going to talk a little bit more about the ongoing strikes that are going. I don't know if you saw this, Joe, but a absolute monster explosion that registered 3.0 on the Richter scale. Went off in Tartus, very close to where the Russians have their Mediterranean port. Heavy Israeli airstrikes reported in Syrian military sites in coastal Tartus region. Let's see. The attacks were reported by local media and several monitors, with some footage distributed on social media showing explosions from the bombings. The Syrian Observatory for Human Rights War Monitor said that early Monday that Israeli Defense Force jets had targeted a series of sites, including air defense units, surface-to-air missile depots, calling the campaign the heaviest strikes in Syria's coastal region since the start of strikes in 2012. Israeli military did not immediately comment. The reported strikes followed a major campaign launched by Israel after the fall of Assad's regime on December 8th. My birthday, by the way. That was a hell of a birthday present, the fall of the Assad regime. To destroy the Syrian strategic military capabilities in a bid to prevent them from falling into the hands of hostile elements. Targets have included chemical weapon sites, missiles, air defenses, Air Force, and Navy targets. Last week, the military said that it so far destroyed some 80% of the Syrian military capabilities and would continue to take action. You want to play this video here, Watcher? This is pretty legit. In an interview with Syrian TV, the leader of the Islamist group who spearheaded the overthrow, this is Jelani again, said Israel had no more excuses to carry out airstrikes. He's basically saying, stop blowing my shit up, man. Better known by his nom de guerre. Oh, by the way, that's his. Let's see. Did they tell his real name? Yeah, Ahmad Sahara. Yeah, that's a pretty big explosion right there. He also appeared to indirectly respond to Israel's concern and offer reassurances that the new Syrian government would not threaten the Jewish state or allow Iran to reestablish itself in Syria. Now, I agree that he won't allow Iran to reestablish itself because he's going to set up a Sunni state. But ultimately, he's lying if he says he's not going to continue the fight against Israel. He's just, he has no obligation to tell the truth to non-believers.
Well, I was going to say, yes, the man who named himself after the fact that his father once lived in the Golan Heights before the Israelis forced him out certainly has no negative stereotypes about the Jewish nation.
He's got to be a good guy. He's got 2 ninjas with him right there in the photo.
Yeah, look at that.
Let's see.
Good guys.
Israel said, let's see, as well as the major aerial campaigns, Israel's entered a United States patrol buffer zone. I wonder, I haven't heard anything about the UN patrols that go on in this area. If it seems like, didn't they get attacked or something?
When all this started happening.
Say that again, I'm sorry.
They remained on their bases while this all happened.
Yeah, but didn't they get attacked at some point? Didn't one of the UN bases in Syria get attacked, and then the Israelis basically came to their defense?
Yes, one of their operations
UN
in the Heights. Yes,
UN troops cowering inside their bases. That that just, Joe, I don't think I've ever heard of this before. That's a
Hey, Watcher,
weird.
let me
Odd
let me
development.
ask you a question. If you're a troop and I put you in a base between two groups that hate each other, would you be interested at all in getting in between them?
Isn't that literally their entire fucking job?
Yeah, but just because that's their job doesn't mean I would be interested in risking my life for it. Now, storm the beach of Normandy, I'm all in. But getting in
I don't
between the
know.
Houthis and
I
the
took a
Tutsis that
certain
want to kill
joy
each other, I'm out.
I took a certain joy in standing between Serbs and Kosovars and saying I kick both your asses.
I say
Well,
we do it all the time.
The A10 over my shoulder, says otherwise, Mr. Bosnian. Let's see. Israel said it would not become involved in the conflict in Syria and that a seizure of a buffer zone established in 1974 was a temporary defensive measure that would last only until it could guarantee security along the frontier. Israel and Syria do not have diplomatic relations and have formally been in perpetual state of war since Israel declared independence in 1948. While the fall of the Assad regime, which stood over for 5 decades, could provide a historic opportunity for recognition between Israel and its neighbor, the potential power vacuum in Syria could also lead to further chaos. My money is on a new civil war within Syria, and here's what's going to spark it. This Jelani guy is basically going to tell Turkey to pound sand. And
well, let me just say that it's not going to be new; it's going to be a continuation because they don't control the whole country. They control like a third of the country.
In fairness, they control most of the people.
Most of the people, but a third of the territory.
Yeah.
So there's still a lot of folks out there that are unhappy and are not friends with them. ISIS being one of them.
Speaking of Turkey, our final story here deals with Turkey and Erdogan. This is him trying to make his play now. Turkey ready to offer military training to Syria if new administration requests, Minister says. I bet you would sell them guns and tanks and all kinds of other stuff too if they really wanted it. The new administration in Syria should have been given a chance to govern following the constructive messages. And Turkey stands ready to provide military training if such help was requested, Turkish defense minister said. NATO member Turkey backed the Syrian rebels who toppled President Assad last week, ending a 13-year civil war. Turkey reopened its... See, that's very optimistic of them saying that it ended the civil war. Right. No, it just paused the civil war. The civil war is ongoing.
Oh man!
While Turkey invades areas of the SDF, continuing that same civil war.
I have to hand it to our fan chat. They really do come through.
The Druze.
The Druze conspiracy. Do we have like a global Druish conspiracy?
Oh, we will probably by the time the show's over.
Yeah. In their first statement, the new administration that toppled Assad announced that they would respect all government institutions, the United Nations, and other international organizations. That's exactly what you say when you want to get money from countries. In the first statement, let's see. We think that we need to see that what a new administration will do, give them the chance. When asked whether Turkey was considering military cooperation with the new Syrian government, they said Ankara had already military cooperation and training agreements with many countries. Turkey is ready to provide the necessary support if the new administration requests it. This is rich, Joe. I mean, this is a country that occupies parts of Syria. They are the ones that trained and gave them basically safety to develop while, Assad continued to get pummeled. And then now they're saying, well, we don't really have anything to do with them, but we would be more than happy to deal with them if they asked.
I'm sorry, I was doing something else. What did you ask me?
So I was just saying that, I just think it's rich that the Turks are acting like they don't really have anything already to do with these people.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, they already funded, trained, and directed exactly what was going on.
And it's rich. So this next part that I'm going to talk about, is absolutely rich considering who they just put in power in Damascus. Turkey's priority remains the elimination of Kurdish YPG militia, terrorist organizations, right? Part of the U.S.-backed Syrian opposition group, and it has made it clear to Washington. Syria, the SDF, which controls parts of Syria's largest oil fields, is the main ally and the U.S. coalition against Islamic State militants. It is spearheaded by the YPG, a group that Ankara sees as an extension of the outlawed Kurdistan Workers' Party, or the PKK, whose militant fighters have battled the Turkish state for 40 years. In fairness, the PKK are absolute communists, but also in fairness, most of the people who are members, these Kurdish, the rank and file, they wouldn't know a communist or a Druze. It's all Greek to them. In the new period,
I think that the position of Turkey is because Erdogan sees himself as the caliph, and he wants to be able to say, well, I'm training them. I'm actually leading them. They're just a puppet state of me. It's kind of where he's coming from.
Well, and from what I understand, the other side of this is that just as massive migration has caused political upheaval in almost every other country in the world, it's also caused a lot of issues in Turkey for Erdogan and his ruling coalition, largely from Syria.
Let's see. When asked about the future involvement of Syria of Russia, a longtime ally of Assad, which last week granted him asylum, the Turkish defense minister said he saw no sign of a complete Russian withdrawal. Russia, he said, is moving its military assets from different parts of Syria to its two bases. By the way, they are absolutely unassing the airport. Currently, they're flying out their large pieces of equipment to include a S-400 system. It makes me think they're going to give up the airport for sure, and maybe even the Navy base. But
I don't see why they wouldn't. I'm going to be honest here. These rebels are the people that the Russians have been bombing for almost a decade, along with the government. The fact that the rebels aren't attacking the Russians is probably mostly a play to hopefully one day leave themselves open to get Russian support.
Yeah. Guys, that's all I've got for today. Joe, what do you think this week's going to bring?
Some sort of escalation on the drone front. I think that's kind of what this week's going to be about. And I think we're also going to see a ramping up of protest activity as Christmas approaches, because we have to be all in for Palestine and not celebrate these holidays of the Christians and Jews. So watch for those things.
Yeah.
Watcher?
Yeah, if you want to know where my brain is at the very least, go watch the most recent episode of the Jack Ryan Show and stay out of large cities.
If you want one reason to give credence to the drone thing, I will leave you with this piece. This is kind of like the reverse Kramer index, If this guy says one thing, then you kind of go the other way. So let me just open this up.
Very sophisticated, using very sophisticated electronic detection technologies provided by federal authorities. We have not been able to, and neither have state or local law enforcement authorities, corroborate any of the reported visual sightings. To the contrary, Upon review of available imagery, it appears that many of the reported sightings are actually manned aircraft that are being operated lawfully. The United States Coast Guard is providing support to the state of New Jersey and has confirmed that there is no evidence of any foreign-based involvement from coastal vessels. And importantly, there are no reported or confirmed drone sightings in any restricted airspace. Using very sophisticated...
that makes me think all of a sudden that it's actually probably very likely to be true. And, you know, I think my confidence that we have a drone problem has increased.
Yeah. Also, I've been corrected from the chat. I did mean the Sean Ryan show, not Jack Ryan.
Yeah, I was going to say, is there a new season of Jack Ryan out?
Yeah. Sorry.
Anyway, so, you know, long story short is I just don't think I have any idea what the hell's going on with this drone thing. Sorry if I was prickly earlier, guys, but ultimately it's one of these kind of things like we got to take in as much kind of information as we can.
Yeah, but it's like anything else in the world.
I know. I'm with you. It's just one of those kind of things like, you know, you listen first and then you discard if it doesn't hold up. So
I mean, homeboy said at one point that his friend had a suitcase nuke in his hands. So I can't buy much else a guy like that says.
Not just any old suitcase nuke, a Ukrainian suitcase nuke.
Yeah.
Which, God.
Hold on a second. I've just seen an important chat I want to highlight here. Is there a Drewish space laser?
Yeah, I think that was the whole point of the show.
Same.
Well, if only there was a Drewish, you know, intelligence agency that could give us money.
But
if it starts with a W, then we could you know, take the money on Wednesdays. I was looking for it, but I can't find it. All right. Anyway, guys, that's about all I have for today. We will continue to stay on top of this breaking drone news, or we may ignore it completely on Wednesday. Hard to tell. Is there a Jewish princess? I mean, you'd have to go to New York for sure, right, to find that.
She doesn't look Jewish to me.
Yeah. Well, is our mother Jewish? I want to know if their brisket's any good. All right.
Mom's making a brisket.
Guys, that's all I got for today. Joe, thank you. Watcher, thank you. Chat, you guys are awesome as always. Looking at 103 here at the end over on YouTube and 176 over on Rumble. You guys, every time I see that, it makes me proud that you guys are here to find good stuff. So if we're worth listening to, please, if you haven't done already, subscribe to the channel. Like the video, share your your opinion that we're a pretty badass place to find out information. First thing in the morning, wake up with the Future Conflict guys. Hopefully we will turn this into a night show eventually, but no times. You know what, guys? We should start it up as a night show over through New Year's. What do you think? Because I'll be in the States.
I'm not opposed.
To do what now?
You switch the time of the show to PM rather than AM.
Yeah, a PM show. What do you think?
Sure. I'm all about me not having to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning to get on the show.
that is exactly where my brain was at.
I know. Well, but then we just need to find an evening time that we're all good for. So you keep that in mind. So, all right, guys. That's all I got. Thank you very much. And as always, stay safe.